Hi, I'm Dylan Byers.
And I'm Hadas Gold.
And this is On Media.
So how's the media been treating this shutdown?
It's been interesting. It's the Republicans and Democrats obviously both have their safe havens in terms of Fox News, MSNBC, respectively. Down the middle, there's the Republicans certainly have been trying, making their best effort to spin the shutdown in such a way that it reflects poorly on Democrats because they know that they're kind of on their heels at the moment. And they've kind of engaged in some really interesting tactics, which the media more or less has kind of quashed after giving it, the attention of a 6 or 12-hour news cycle. So, for instance, you have RNC Chairman Reince Priebus standing in front of Veterans War Memorial, basically making a big point about how veterans weren't allowed in. You have right-wing media outlets like Drudge Report highlighting this notion that Harry Reid doesn't want to help children with cancer. All of these things that kind of like gain a lot of momentum for a moment and then kind of more or less fade away.
Mm-hmm. And then Fox News, on their website, they decided to call the government shutdown a slim down, which is kind of adding to the media world's perception of what is actually going on in Washington.
Right, which is kind of funny to see those two things coexisting at the same time, because on the one hand they're saying, oh my God, this is so terrible, what's going on? How dare you Democrats for letting this happen? And on the other hand, you have Fox News saying, oh, it's not that bad, it's not a shutdown, it's just a slim down. So speaking of the government shutdown and the media, you had an interesting piece about which government-funded news organizations had been deemed essential as opposed to non-essential. Tell us about that.
Right, so the government deemed that a lot of the international news organizations that the United States funds, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, were all deemed essential and essential to national security. These include Radio Free Cuba, Al Hurra, which is a Middle Eastern broadcasting network, which actually played a huge role in yesterday's incident at the White House in Capitol Hill. They're actually the ones that captured that amazing footage of the black sedan being approached by police officers and then rushing off towards Capitol Hill. And so actually if they had been deemed non-essential, then potentially we would not have had that amazing footage yesterday.
Amazing foresight. So
now CNN and NBC are actually potentially eligible to hold RNC debates. Why is that, Dylan?
Right, so after this huge saga of opposition to these two different Hillary Clinton-related film projects, one a miniseries from NBC that was going to star Diane Lane, the other a documentary from CNN Films, both CNN and NBC have now caved into the pressure and basically said, okay, we're not going to work on these projects. And part of the reason, at least for CNN, and why CNN decided they weren't going to do these their documentary project was because the director basically said, after all this pressure from Hillary Clinton's handlers, her loyal supporters, and also from the Republican National Committee, I basically can't find anyone who's actually going to talk to me for this film. So it's kind of, it's one of these weird moments where both the RNC and Hillary Clinton's team kind of benefit from this, and CNN and NBC kind of look caught with their tail between their legs. So, major media move this week, George Will jumping ship, going to Fox News now. Tell us about that.
So after decades at ABC News, George Will, who is a very influential conservative voice, is joining Fox News now officially. He'll be appearing as a regular commentator, especially on their Sunday Fox News show. This was a really huge scoop for Fox News. George Will is very well respected in the media world. George Stephanopoulos only had good things to say about him. And he's actually going to continue his relationship with the Washington Post, where he has a regular column.
And one important thing, too, is that you have to remember Sunday shows very much value their stable of contributors. George Will is one of them. Like him or hate him, he's always on there, and he always says something that kind of moves the dial at least a little bit. So this is, I would say, a big loss for ABC, a big get for Fox. Whether or not it ultimately is good for George Will's career, up in the air.
The media is part of the problem as well.
Oh, come on. That's so easy. That's so easy.
Carol, you're beautiful, but you have to be honest as well.
Okay, I think we should leave it here.
What just happened there?
So Carol Costello on CNN was interviewing Representative Rokita, a Republican from Indiana.
Right.
And they were talking about the shutdown, they were talking about Obamacare, and Rokita had a few key comments that were pretty much about Carol Costello's looks. He said, as we just heard, that she's so beautiful, but she has to be honest, and he said earlier that she looks too young to have grandchildren. And Carol was not too happy about this. She emailed us later and said she thought it was completely inappropriate, and she thought that it was a way of Representative deflect the questions that she was trying to ask.
So it is inappropriate, but let's even take that away. Let's just talk about having the savvy and wherewithal anytime you go on camera or anytime you're on a mic. How do you not have the foresight to know that that's going to end up screwing you over? I mean, there's no way to say something like that without inviting controversy.
Yeah, it's happened before, and it never ends well.
It's amazing, and you know what's amazing is it's the sort of thing that I think happens with relative frequency when the cameras aren't rolling.
Don't tell us we're pretty. Don't tell us we're pretty.
So I'm Dylan Byers.
I'm Hadas Gold.
And this was On Media. For these and other stories, you can check out our blog at politico.com.